I remember very clearly reading the screenplay, and I had this beautiful, generous letter from Mike saying, please read this script, we love you to play Chuck. And just like Chiwetel playing Marty in the movie, and Karen Gillan playing Felicia, for the first third of the film I was like, who on earth is Chuck? Because that was the great mystery, and then when the mystery was revealed to me, that he was a seemingly ordinary man with a seemingly ordinary life, that just exploded into a moment of joy and freedom and spontaneity. I felt so excited. I understood it. I understood what Mike was trying to do. I understood the theme, I think, that Stephen King was exploring in the story. It really moved me. It is exactly the kind of art that I love and would love to see in the world. I was so honored that Mike had asked me to do it, and it was immediate. It was a gut yes.
Oh, well, okay. And now I want to say, just pose the same question to you, but it's almost as if you guys are in two movies, very much, and that first, 35 minutes is almost its own self-enclosed piece at the end of the world. So Marty's a very different, I think, he's in a very different film. Yeah. So what attracted you to it?
Yeah, well, it was probably a lot of the same things in a way. I just thought the script was so moving. I thought it was so emotional. It felt very present and truthful. I love the emotional honesty of it. That they're going through something that I felt that I'd recognized as well. The kind of apocalyptic nature of it, but because we'd all gone through COVID, in such recent history, this idea of this collective kind of trauma, and the other things that they're sort of dealing with, the attachment to technology, the kind of falling apart of the world, these ideas, and then trying to find that human connection. I just thought all of that was, incredibly powerful. I love the fact that he was an educator as well, and that was sort of central to the story and the sort of drive and the connection with Chuck. So I just found myself incredibly moved by the story, and so again, it was just like absolutely, I loved it. We spoke actually.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we spoke. I was I was just walking around the Lower East Side, as you do, and I called Tom, and I was like, it's interesting for that reason that we weren't going to be in scenes together. But it was just sort of that idea of just sort of exploring two different parts of the canvas. It was exciting.
Yeah, two different constellations in the same sky somehow, and being part of this ensemble, this incredible ensemble, like instruments in an orchestra, and I think this ensemble is incredible. I think the performance of Benjamin Pajak breaks my heart, and Mark Hamill and Karen, who's not here, and Matthew Lillard, and Mia Sarah, and in the second act, Annalise Basso, I couldn't have done without. That's a dance between two people.
Yeah.
Between three, if you include the Pocket Queen playing her drum kit, conducting the whole thing. And it's a story about how every ordinary life is magic and precious, and all these people have internal worlds of vast range and depth, as do we all. And that really seemed to be what the film was about, that we were exploring that same depth and range. And for Marty, as the stars are going out, and for Chuck, old and young, the story seems to be saying, love is all we leave behind, and that's all that matters.
I did want to speak about the cast for a second, because I thought that was one of the best benches I've ever seen in a film. I really did. I thought that the one that stuck out among several, I don't know who you got to play the little old lady who lived down the street who he brings the baked goods to, and she tries to get gossip.
Heather Langenkamp.
Oh my gosh, she was astonishing. I mean, she just pops off the screen. And Matthew Lillard. I found that the scene between your character, between Marty and Gus, there was something about that was almost as cosmic as the scene of watching the heavens fall. Because it was purely authentic, and the way he came in there, and he started playing the goofy neighbor, and by the end you could see the total and complete terror and tragedy of this guy's life ending. I just thought that was just magic. Yeah. Did you go out of your way to, or otherwise can I steal your casting director? I mean, who do you?
Bizarrely and kind of by chance, I had lunch and met Matthew Lillard for the first time about 6 months before the movie came out. And I wanted to work with him for many years because I'm a child of the 90s, and Scream was a major event in my life. And so, it's like, who do you know Lillard as? There's the generation that knows him from Scream, but then there's the generation that knows him from Scooby-Doo, and now there's, my kids are just like, it's William Afton. The FNAF generation has him too. But I had to call him and say, hey, I really want you to be part of this film. I have one scene I think you'd be exceptional at. It's just one scene, and we have no money, and you have to fly down to Alabama. But what I can promise you is that you'll start work on a weekday morning, and you'll be finished with the film by lunch. That's what I can offer. And he agreed. We had a lot of Heather Langenkamp as well, who's a friend and who I've worked with before. It was the same conversation. I was kind of hat in hand going to a lot of actors that I knew socially or had worked with, and basically just saying, please come for one scene, please come for one day. And an enormous amount of them did, which I credit to, I think, the impact of Stephen King's story, which they all loved, and yeah, it turned out to be this incredible ensemble that kind of came together at a time. There were all these apocalypses with this project. Like when the short story was published, I was reading it a month into the COVID lockdown. It's April 2020. When we were finally shooting it, SAG and the WGA were on strike. We were an interim agreement film because we were a true independent, and so it felt like the industry was having this apocalyptic moment. And now it's being released, now. So, man, oh man. But yeah, so I was very, very lucky that the stars aligned on this one. And you hear people say that all the time with independent films, but they truly did. They really had to for us.
And did you feel that because this is I would say unapologetically hopeful film, did you feel that was an antidote for what we're living in now?
I couldn't have contemplated now then. It was an antidote for me when I read it in 2020. And you're right, I think unapologetically hopeful is how I would describe King's story. I had never come across something that was that earnest and utterly without cynicism at all. I think those kinds of things are very rare, and where I was in 2020, I needed that in a really profound way. I think I need it still. I still find myself coming back to watching this film, which I've seen hundreds of times now at every iteration, and felt like I needed this story. I've always needed this story. I think, unfortunately, our experience on this planet means that we all may be in a place where we need some kind of earnest, unapologetically hopeful love and gentility, where we need to just put down the cynicism. And I know that's hard to do, but that's why I wanted to make the film. That's why I hope it connects with people who may need that, and that's why I wanted this story to be in a form that my kids could enjoy it when they hit a place in their lives, which they inevitably will, where they feel as anxious and prone to despair and fear as I have.
I don't know if they're prone to despair. I have kids too, and I don't think they're prone to despair, but I do think they're, when she was 8, I think, or 9, my youngest daughter said to me, so will there even be colleges by the time I'm 18? And will New York still, she wants to say that anyway, will New York still be above ground? And I said to her honestly, I just said, yeah, honey, it's not your generation you have to worry about, it's your kids. And she said, so you and Mom said, what, screw the grandkids? I mean, that was her response, because she sees it going this way.
My 14-year-old says the same and asks a lot of the same questions, and has the same kind of mystified reaction to, like you, I try to answer as honestly as I can, and it's not nearly enough. I can never say enough to make it okay, and I think that's why, for me, and it may not be true for everyone, but for me, having something enter my life that was without that kind of darkness and without that sense of despair, it ended up being very valuable to me. And, yeah.
I want to go back to the supporting cast again just for a minute, because it was funny. I was going to bring up your dance. Could you each speak a little bit about what it does to work with actors who are that good, that supportive, that engaged? I mean, what was your favorite experience on set with another actor? I've always heard it described as a dance.
But you know what I've always felt about acting, that's what it is. That the magic, if there is any magic, is always what happens between you. And I don't know how to do it unless it's a dance or a rally in tennis or however you talk about it. Actually, almost 20 years ago, Chiwetel and I worked together in a theatre production of Othello, in which Chiwetel was truly magnificent as Othello, and it was it's a play with a lot of pain in it, but we actually had a very happy experience. But I remember that we were extraordinary company. Ewan McGregor played Iago, Kelly Riley played Desdemona, Michelle Fairley played Amelia. But in that production, I really learned, and it was restated to me, how it was the quality of the truthfulness of what we were doing came from the other actors' eyes and their commitment and their generosity of spirit. And it's really stayed with me, that experience. That's the gift of working with great actors. And in this, I really felt it with Annalise Basso and Taylor Gordon, aka the Pocket Queen. That is a trio. That's a dance between 3 people. And in fact, it's probably a dance between about 53 people if you include all the amazing background performers who were, playing in the crowd. I'm forgetting Andy Grush, who plays Mac. Andy Grush is the grumpy guy who needs to pay for the parking. Who also wrote the music for the movie.
Yeah, he's half of the Newton brothers, who have been my composers now my whole career. They're amazing.
But it was, for me at least, it was my first day was day 1 of the schedule. It was Mike's first day, and I was going to do this dance for the first time, and I couldn't have done it without the belief and trust and generosity of Mike and Annalise and PQ. Like looking at Taylor across her drum kit for the first time as she was about to hit the downbeat, she had such a sparkle in her eyes. It was like she was silently saying, "Let's go, you got this." And then I spin and we start, and it's unrepeatable, and it'll never happen again. It only happened there, then, at that time, and thank goodness Mike was there with the camera recording it. Otherwise, I don't know what would happen. But yeah, a happy time.
Chiwetel, your thoughts on the performance of the film or performing with somebody?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of the work that I was doing in this was with Karen, and that relationship, the Marty-Felicia relationship was very beautiful to me because it felt very truthful. The first day, my first day shooting was the big telephone conversation, and just from the moment that I heard Karen just on the other end of the phone, in actuality she was upstairs in the place that we were shooting. But as soon as I heard her talking, she just had she carried all of the subtext, all of the depth of this relationship, just everything, just tonal quality. So we immediately were kind of in lockstep with where these two people were and what they needed from each other, and some of what their past must have been and the reasons why their relationship didn't work out, but their affection is still there and the hopefulness is still there and all of that sort of love is still there and the need through all of this to reconnect and understand each other. And so I felt like that was all, and I thought, in Marty's journey in the film, all of the people that he interacts with, just sort of offer these kind of very different shades and allow him to explore these different shades. And as we talked about with Matthew Lillard, and what that sort of brings to it, but also Carl Lumley and, which is kind of polar opposite, both brilliant performances and sort of polar opposite performance in a way, this sort of sense of this kind of grounded, very spiritual Carl Lumley in the film. And so yeah, I was completely thrilled by the way that the film worked and allowed me to explore this character, but also these dynamics with other actors. I just thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that was beautiful in that first section is it's what we all knew experiencing COVID too, is we are in the face of this great, tectonic shift in the world that's going on in that moment are completely helpless. And I thought that there was a beautiful, quiet, not desperation, but almost like quiet acceptance that came into yours and Karen's performance by the end. It was just sort of like, this is it. There goes the North Star.
I think it's rare to know in a moment like that, shooting things, that the audience completely understands what you're expressing. Because we all went through, in the early days of COVID, we all went through those kinds of existential questions. We all felt those sorts of traumas. We all felt that concern, deep concerns for friends, family, not knowing where it was going to go, what was going to happen. So the knowledge that the audience, almost anywhere in the world, kind of understands and can lock into what we're exploring in that early part of the film is really remarkable. I don't think there's many other things that you could do that.
No, and I think it's also credit to Mike because one of the reasons that I think people forget that It's a Wonderful Life works is because the first act is so dark. I mean, you believe that Jimmy Stewart is going to kill himself. You believe that he is all the way down into that rabbit hole. And I felt like the reason this worked was because this first 35 minutes, or however long it is so dark. It's so dead on. This is the end of the world. Here it goes. There's no way out. No, that's the sky. The heavens are actually falling. There we go. And then we get, who's this guy in bed? And then we move on. But I thought that was a real strong credit to your directing, Mike, and your screenwriting. Was that first act, which is the third act, I get it. First act, third act.
Thank you so much. It's a Wonderful Life is one of those touchstones that we talked about and kind of what we hoped this film could reach for. But just in that I completely agree. The contrast. The contrast between where it begins and where it ends, and the depth of the journey that you're taking on in that film was something I was absolutely really hoping we could fractionally emulate here. Yeah.
I think that's a great, if I may just add, I think I found that's an extraordinary wisdom in the center of the story that Stephen King has written, which is a deep and truthful acknowledgement that life can be very, very difficult, and things can happen which are unexpected and destabilizing, and life, for all of us, we have to encounter grief and loss and suffering of all different kinds. And the wisdom that Stephen King is able to access is that alongside that experience is another one of joy and love, and it is as real as all of the darkness. And that taken together, you're actually looking at the business of living. So that actually doesn't have the hue of it doesn't shy away from acknowledging that life can be unexpectedly hard, and alongside the hardship there is real joy and real love.
I would say even, as we're part of I think it's me, you, and Frank Darabont, of the 3-time members of the 3-time Stephen King Adaptation Club. So I've done a deep dive. I did Mr. Mercedes, I did Underwatch, I did Outsider. And what I find is that there is a quality in King that always punches up through the darkness, and it is, strangely enough, a kind of earnestness in the characters. There's an earnest desire to do good in the characters that can kind of be it's the shiny beacon through all the blackness, at least in the deep dives I've done.
Could not agree with you more. I think the thing is that a lot of people think about the horror that Stephen King creates, and they don't often think about the love and the light that he punctuates that with. It isn't about the clown, it is about the kids, and it's about the friendship and the bravery and the courage that they find to stand up to something that there's really no chance they're going to defeat. But Stephen King is an optimist and a humanist, and so of course they do. And they do because the friendship that holds them together makes them greater than the sum of their parts. Stephen King, I think, has a huge and beating heart, and it's in everything. It's in even the darkest things. One of the scariest books I've ever read in my life is Pet Sematary. Terrifying story. The whole thing happens because he's exploring the intensity of parental love and grief. All of that is always there. And I think one of the miraculous things about the way he writes is that and I tried so hard to just move that over into this particular scene of the film, but right after you experience Chuck's dance, King reminds you that he's only months away from not being able to walk anymore, much less dance, reminds you of the details of what he's about to go through, and then somehow pulls it back. He doesn't do it to try to rain on that parade. He doesn't do it to try to diminish the beauty and the joy that you just witnessed. He does it to underscore its importance. And at the very end of that, pulls you right back into that beautiful, line from the story where he says, he will remember when he dropped his briefcase and moved his hips to the beat of the drum, and he will think that is why God made the world. And that scene only works because he's talking about the darkest things in chorus with the beauty he's presenting. That's what makes it all work.
So we have to move out. We've been asked that you guys just please stay seated long enough to let the performers get to that doorway, because we have another one to do. But thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.